Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson. Kyle, how are you doing?
Pretty good. The lights at the end of the tunnel in terms of sports, it seems like. Baseball's almost going to come back. We're getting German soccer back, so I'm just going to deep dive into both of those here soon. So I have something to consume my mind.
Right. Yeah, our German soccer content is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Yes, very exciting stuff. Just some notes before the show starts. We're going to try to do this every Monday. We didn't do it this past Monday. I moved into a place. It didn't work out. Had to move back to another place. So a little bit of chaos, but we're going to try to be doing these every Monday. So be on the lookout for them there. I also have now had an audio only file put on the website. Just go to Jackson Krieger Sports. The link is in the description for all my videos, so you can just click on there if you just want to download it and listen to it on your phone or something. And also, one more note is we have to get to our worst take of the week from last week. The week prior, I had the worst take of the week. I had to watch a clip of every Jameis Winston turnover, which is truly just a magical thing. That's not even really a bad thing, I feel like. It's almost like you know how to say like every snowflake is slightly different? I feel like every interception or turnover Jameis Winston has is its own little unique flavor to it. Very fun stuff. But this week, Kyle, the Las Vegas / Oakland Raiders fans were not very happy with you after your brutal disrespect to everything that is Raiders. So you had the worst take of this week. What was your reaction?
Well, one of the most successful franchises the past 5 years obviously does nothing wrong. So
Yeah.
I completely understand where everyone's coming from. I mean, we're going to talk about Raiders here, so I guess I could get into it. I think if you look just in a vacuum, obviously if I were in the Raiders' shoes, I would still pick Judy, and I would pick a different cornerback over Arnett. But if you look in a vacuum at the Raiders offseason, you got to say they're one of the winners just from simply looking at the players they needed and the positions they needed to address. They needed to address speed at the skill position. They needed to address their cornerback position. They needed to address their linebacker position. They needed another pass rusher. They addressed all those positions. So, you got to say that they're a winner for the offseason. I think they're going to be a solid team, but I still would have picked Judy if I had the pick and I was in charge. But, I don't get paid that much, so I guess it makes sense.
Let it be known, Kyle, now backtracking after getting worst take of the week, gets worst take of the week, instantly is a diehard Raiders fan. Yeah, listen, it happens. Part of the reason why there's so many Raiders fans just on this channel is because I've kind of been pro Raiders for a large part of this. So there's a bigger Raiders fan base than a lot of other teams. I think that's part of it. But I also think that you're wrong. So both things can be true at the same time. First, we'll get to what I'm going to make you watch for the worst take of the week, and then we can kind of get a little bit more into the Raiders. Worst take of the week. I think that I'm not going to overthink this one. Let's have you watch the Game 7 of the Bruins Blues. There's a highlight clip about 11 minutes long. You can choose there's also like an 8-minute one. Let you choose a highlight clip of one of the most glorious games that's happened in quite some time.
I was not happy this game. I can't wait to watch it. At least it's over by the first period, so I kind of can just get over it at that point. So, but here we go. Yes. Go Bruins always, though.
All right. And again, I can't talk being a Lightning fan. Things did not exactly work out well for us. But yeah, let's get into the Raiders a little bit more. So the question is, how good can the Raiders be heading into the 2020 season? What's their ceiling? What's their floor? And what's the expectations? Also, we'll have you start things off.
Sorry, I lost you there. But in terms of how good the Raiders can be going into the 2020 season, we're going to see here. Obviously, we're taping this at 7:15, I think, on Thursday night. So I think the schedule is going to come out here shortly. I am interested to see what.
Sorry to interrupt you for a second. I meant to say that at the beginning of the show. Yeah, the schedule is going to come out midway through this. We'll probably touch on it maybe towards the end of the show. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, go ahead and continue.
Yes, I am interested to see what their schedule is going to look like. I just think that division is going to be so tough. Obviously, they're going to have the Super Bowl champs. Reigning Super Bowl champs are still there. I think Denver, if I were to address another winner of the offseason, I think Denver was really good, and I think I like Drew Lock. I liked what I saw. I think he needs to throw the ball downfield a little bit more, but I still liked a lot of what I saw out of him. He seemed very smart with the ball in that limited time, and it's going to be interesting to see what Denver can do this next season. I think they can be pretty good, and I actually really like the Chargers roster if it can stay healthy. That was their big issue last year, especially on defense, was how much that team was injured, but that defense is still loaded. And they brought in Chris Harris also as a second cornerback, which is going to be a really good addition. The biggest issue with the Chargers to me is going to be quarterback, and I don't think Tyrod Taylor's the guy, but that's besides the point. So with all that, I think the Raiders are probably going to be pretty close to what they were last season. I think they got better, but I think everybody else around them also got better. So I think it's going to be tough to see improvement this next season. But I do think that this team and Mayock and what he's done is going in the right direction. And this team could be pretty competitive in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, actually. I mean, I'm very high on Denver. I'm not as high on the Chargers. I think Chargers is going to rebuild this year. I think that they have a young quarterback. It's going to be more of a work in progress with them. I am very high on Denver. I was high on them last season. I was a big Drew Lock fan coming out of the draft. Still am a big Drew Lock fan. Yeah, I like the Raiders. I think they have a lot of talent on their roster. But yeah, they're the biggest obstacle in their way is going to be the division. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning champs, it seems like it's going to be tough to dethrone them. I do think that there is there's the ceiling for them. I do feel like it's like a 12-4 team. I just think that we'll have to see exactly how things go. Their defense was not good last year. They have made a lot of improvements on it, though. So I'm very interested in it. They do have sort of this. It's a weird way to do it. The way the offense is run and just the team in general is run. It's almost like it was like new school, like a new idea 15 years ago, but like no one's really doing it that way. So it still kind of works. It's a very interesting. It's like that's what John Gruden was. He was an innovator 15 years ago, and he kind of he kind of still does that in a similar way. He does do, obviously he has new wrinkles to it, but it's a very interesting thing. We also had a question from Cooper Harold who asked, what is Derek Carr's ceiling? Is he out after this year? I think he's definitely not out over this year. I think we've had this conversation before. We'll probably have it again. I'm a big Derek Carr guy. I think that he is a solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to be going anywhere unless the Raiders can find a much better option, which I don't know if I totally see. But what do you think? Because I think you're going to be more negative about it than I am.
I mean, this was another thing that people weren't happy about me saying last week. Also, I think,
okay, keep the same energy. Do it.
I don't think John Gruden really wanted him there when he got there. I think when John Gruden showed up in Oakland, he was not expecting to keep Derek Carr here in the building for very long. And it's very clear, I think, to a lot of people that they at least were interested in what Tom Brady was doing and if he was available. And at that point, what happens to Derek Carr if Tom Brady became available and wanted to go to Las Vegas? I think he's a solid quarterback. As far as his ceiling, I don't think it's crazy to say that, Carr's probably top 12, top 15 quarterback in the league. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that is going to win you big games. I think he's a guy that can run a system really well. And if the system's catered to a lot of his strengths, which is, he throws a nice deep ball when he has a chance to uncork it. He seems mostly smart with the ball. I think that a system catered to that kind of strength, I think, can be a solid team. I don't think he's a team that's going to transcend any system, though, and be dominant anywhere else.
Again, I would kind of disagree. I do kind of see what you're saying to some degree. I actually don't think that we're actually that far off in terms of like where we would rank Carr, because I also sort of have him in that range. I do think that, one thing that I think that he doesn't get enough credit for is he does always seem to come through in the fourth quarter with the game on the line. He is one of those guys that very often seems to find a way to put them up when they have to. I do think there is something to that in the quarterback position. But I also think it could just be a difference in philosophies of how we view team building. I kind of view quarterbacks as you just got to get a Derek Carr or better to be fine. Maybe, there's also the philosophy of you should just keep trying until you get a top 5 quarterback and then go out and try to win a Super Bowl. So it could just be that. It could just be we have different philosophies in how we would build a team.
Yeah, I've had Tom Brady my entire life, so
right.
I feel like the quarterback's a pretty important position.
And the best quarterback we've ever had is Jameis Winston. So that could also be part of why I'm a big Derek Carr fan and you're not as big of one.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a guy like Brady, that's just such a benefit to have. And anyone who wants to come in the comments and say, but you had Matt Castle and he did just fine. That was with easily the worst schedule in the NFL, and the team still got 5 losses worse. So I don't want to hear anything about Matt Castle being productive. But that's besides the point. That's not Derek Carr. But I think
reel it in. Every time you start talking about the 2008 Patriots, I'm going to have to reel you in, Kyle. Back on focus. The Derek Carr.
Yeah, I think he's fine to me. I feel like a lot of these mid-tier guys, you either really like them or you really don't. Like I'm still a Kirk Cousins guy, and I still think Kirk Cousins is a really productive quarterback, and I still think he can win a Super Bowl just as easily as anybody else in that mid-tier range. But I'm obviously probably higher on him than a guy like Carr. I just haven't seen – you said he gets it done in the fourth quarter, but at the same time, I feel like it's in a lot of games that still at the end of the day don't matter. And that's where I feel like, I want to see it where it matters, and that would produce wins, and they haven't done that yet.
Well, I mean, he did have that. I mean, he did have that season before he got injured where they were going to get a bye week, looked like heading into the playoffs. So we didn't really get a chance, and their defense has just been putrid for pretty much his entire time there. So hopefully this year we will get a chance to see him in those big games and see what happens. But from that, we can transition from one quarterback who is in that mid-tier range to a different quarterback in a mid-tier range. That is Andy Dalton, who has been a starter for a decent amount of time with the Cincinnati Bengals, now a Dallas Cowboy as a backup. Very interesting move. I think that this gives Dallas some insurance in case Dak does hold out. What was your initial thoughts to the whole Andy Dalton saga this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's 3 perspectives you have to look at this from. It's from Andy Dalton's perspective, Dak Prescott's perspective, and the Dallas Cowboys perspective. Makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys. Like you said, it's insurance in case Dak does hold out, that you have a guy that you can feel comfortable with playing a couple games. With Dak, if he says, "Oh, I want $40 million," and they're like, "We're not going to pay you that. We'll just play Andy Dalton," I honestly would just kind of laugh in their face and say, "Okay, good luck," and then walk out the door. I think Dak Prescott's worth $40 million? Probably not, but that's just kind of the price to pay for a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. And, people want to give him a lot of crap all the time, but he's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL, and that's what he has been for the past 2 years. And I think he is going to be probably in that range again. So if you have a guy who's in that range, you're just going to have to pay him top dollar, because whoever the next quarterback is lined up for free agency at that level is just going to demand the highest paid salary. And it's just going to keep continually happening. Mahomes is going to be the next guy after him who's going to make $45 million. So I think from Dak's perspective, I wouldn't really be worried about Andy Dalton. And if his intention is to get his contract this offseason, I would continue to go with the plan to get your contract this offseason. I didn't really think it made a lot of sense for Andy Dalton unless he decided he really just wanted to go home and be back at where he played high school ball, where he played college ball, all that kind of stuff. But there are opportunities for him that I felt like he could have played. And, it was clear. I watched a lot of Andy Dalton this past month, especially when I felt like he was going to end up in New England possibly at some point. But the Patriots could have had him. The Jaguars could have had him. The Chargers could have used him. And I even think as far as backup jobs, I would have went to the Rams before I went to the Cowboys. He probably had all these opportunities, and I just don't really see why he would want to go to Dallas and just kind of sit around. And that's pretty much what he's going to do, because I think eventually they're going to pay Dak, because Dak's at the level that he needs to get paid. And I think this Dallas team is really good, and I think they can win that really bad division also, and they're going to need a guy like Dak Prescott to do that. So I didn't really understand it for Andy's perspective.
Yeah, okay, so a lot to unpack there. First I'll take it from the Andy Dalton perspective. That's an interesting point. I don't know exactly how many teams really wanted him. I don't know how many teams were going after him hard enough. It could have just been Dallas could have been the better option. I do think there is a perception about Dallas that maybe is a little bit better than they actually are, but their offense is good. I mean, their offense, especially the pieces around them, it's a good offense, and they just added,
CeeDee
Lamb through the draft. So they definitely have some real tools. I could see that maybe he just figures, hey, that's a good option if I do get some playing time.
Weren't they number one last year?
What's that?
Weren't they the number one offense in football last year?
They might have
top
been.
three. Yeah,
it depends on. I mean, there's several different metrics. I'm not sure what. I'm sure that they were number one in some metric.
I thought
they were
DVOA, but go ahead.
Gotcha. They were definitely a very good offense. Part of that is playing the Redskins and Giants twice a year, and even Eagles defense was very hit or miss. But yeah, I do think that it's interesting from his perspective. I also find this whole Dak Prescott situation so fascinating. I just really do, because I didn't have him. I made a video of like top 7 quarterbacks. I didn't have him on there. I do think it's sort of like a fringe top 10 quarterback. So maybe I'm a bit lower on him than you, but I do like him as a player. And I do think that it's just that interesting thing of, do you Kirk Cousins it? Do you go the Washington Redskins route and say, we're going to franchise tag you, but then let you walk because we don't think you're worth that much money? And I think people forget the Redskins were going to win their division before Alex Smith got hurt. They were 6-3 with I believe it was a 2-game lead before Alex Smith went down. And then just, they had Josh Johnson starting at a certain point. Things did not work out well at the end of that season. So I do think that, I agree. I don't know if Andy Dalton is. I've always kind of liked Andy Dalton. Again, he's kind of in the Derek Carr sort of mid-tier. He was never going to take a team kicking and screaming to a Super Bowl, but he could be a solid quarterback from time to time. And I do wonder what happens if he doesn't get hurt that one season. But yeah, I think it's a good move for the Cowboys just to get a good backup quarterback. I do think backup quarterbacks matter.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Dalton last year, I mean, honestly, he wasn't that great because I think he had 14 interceptions last year, but he was also devoid of just about his entire roster. Mm-hmm. Obviously, losing AJ Green really would hurt any quarterback's numbers. But that's interesting that you don't think Dak Prescott's a top 7 quarterback, because I was thinking about it the other day of who my list would be, and it would essentially have Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson as my top 3.
Okay.
Then you probably put Deshaun Watson's up there, obviously. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. Brady's up there. Rodgers is up there. So that's 5 and 6. Then I feel like at that point, you're kind of debating between Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, unless I'm completely blanking on somebody.
I would go Matt Ryan above him as well. I think you could make the argument for Stafford, although the injury thing is definitely concerning. I think he's in the conversation, I suppose. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what I did for top 7, but I do remember I didn't have him in there. I'll have a list up right here. So yeah, Lamar, Mahomes, and Wilson. I think Brees and Brady are both better. I think Watson's better. I do think Aaron Rodgers is better at this point in his career. I would say I think a healthy Wentz I choose over Prescott, although he can't stay healthy, so that kind of is yeah,
I mean, that's the biggest thing with Wentz. But at the same time, I still feel like what I saw from Drew Brees at the end of the year last year, I'm not sure I would actually pick him over Dak this next season. Like, if I were to make a list, I almost would have Brees and Wentz lower. Like, I mean, I also think Dak is really good, despite the number of weapons he has. But
no, I do like Dak. Like, don't get me wrong. I think I like him. I think he's a young quarterback getting better every year. I do feel that way. But I don't get this whole Brees fell off at the end of the season. I mean, he didn't throw a single interception in his last 5 games until the of the regular season. Like, he was playing good football, I thought. He just had a bad game in the playoffs.
I just felt like looking at a lot of his throws, like, it just felt like he was like lame dunking a lot of them. And he throws the ball to Michael Thomas 15 times a game, and that works out for him. I feel like
it works.
Well, I don't blame him.
I would too. If I
just feel like overall, you look at the, I mean, I feel like a lot of his throws downfield, it lacked what I normally see from Drew Brees, and I don't know how much is left in the tank with that guy. That's just my personal opinion. But
just have the numbers up right here. His last 4 games of the season, I'll do passer rating. 138.4, 148.9, 118.2, 123.3. So if that's falling off, sign me up. But all right.
I still personally would take Dak from this past week.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree. And we can move on now
Yeah.
here to a quarterback where we can all agree is just getting into his prime and only getting better. Jameis Winston now has moved over
Oh,
to
geez.
he's joined the dark side with the New Orleans Saints. I actually do like this decision from Winston's perspective of this. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier of like take a flyer on, take a bet on yourself to some degree. I was saying maybe go to New England, sign a small deal. He's signing a smaller deal going to the Saints. We saw how well it worked for Teddy Bridgewater. He got $60 million doing this. So makes some sense for Winston, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is the roadmap that's been built for a lot of these guys who their value kind of goes down based on circumstances. For him, it was turnovers. Bridgewater, it was a lot of the injuries, that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, it makes sense. I agree completely with what he's doing. Obviously, with the situation happening last season in Tampa Bay where he just couldn't hang on to the football, this is going to be a good place for him to restart and get an opportunity to learn a good offense and learn behind some good coaches and a good quarterback and develop his game and potentially get a bigger deal next season.
Exactly. And I mean, I do find it very, again, I never want to root for injury. So I don't hope Drew Brees, hopefully for some reason, Drew Brees has to miss 4 games. Hopefully he goes on a cruise or something and we get to see some Jameis Winston, because the Jameis Winston in the Saints system would be fantastic. Also, I 100% know what's going to happen now is that Brady is going to do terrible in Tampa Bay, and Winston is going to finally reach his full potential and have, for the next 15 years, terrorize the NFC South. That just seems like the way things are going to be going for us.
I just feel like the one question I've had this whole offseason is like, are the Chargers actually doing this? They have that loaded defense, and they're going to go with Tyrod Taylor. Like, that's the plan. Like, listen, I know the Tyrod Taylor numbers probably say he's better than what he's valued at, but if two franchises both look at you and say, "Nah, you're not good enough," isn't that kind of indicative to probably what you are as a starting quarterback in the league? 2 different franchises have looked at him and said, "We're going to move on," and now he's going to get another starting job just simply because he's there. Like, how are they not going for any of these guys? I know obviously they were trying to get Brady, but at the same time, was there no alternative plans to it if Brady doesn't work out? Like, I still think this roster is very good. And they added Bulaga on the offensive line, which helps probably their weakest spot. I feel like this team could actually be pretty competitive next season, and they're not addressing the biggest position in football.
Yeah, I mean, they did get Herbert, obviously. So that's their.
Yeah, I don't think he's ready to start personally.
Right. I mean, but maybe they just do. Maybe they've evaluated their team differently and think that they are not going to be competitive this year, and so they want to do a rebuild. Again, that's kind of why I'm not too high on the Chargers this year, because I don't trust the quarterback position too much. Again, I don't think Taylor is like a disaster, but he definitely is that like great backup or poor starter area, like a Case Keenum type, one of those guys you don't necessarily want starting, but someone you definitely feel comfortable about being a backup. I do think that the Chargers, I do think they could be good, but yeah, I mean, maybe they just don't like Winston. They don't like his turnovers. Maybe after Philip Rivers, they don't want to go after another guy who's going to be a gunslinger and get some turnovers. I don't know, but it should be fun to watch Jameis Winston if he does get in there. And also, one of my favorite stats is that, to people wondering who's going to be the second string quarterback, Jameis Winston has thrown more passes to Saints players than Taysom Hill has. So it seems like Winston's got the number 2 job there.
Locked up.
Yeah. All right. It's another guy changing teams. So interesting stuff. Oh,
this kind of seems like the Cam Newton spot, doesn't it? The Chargers, going back to that real quick.
Maybe. I guess I could see that. But part of me just feels like they have so many receiving options. I don't know if you want to go after Cam. You might want. I mean, then again, not like Taylor is much better, but I think that they're going to try to go with Herbert. I think they might not start Herbert right away, but I think they're going to go with Herbert later in the season. I just don't think that they want another distraction there almost. And I kind of wonder if Cam Newton is in that like Tim Tebow mode a little bit, where a lot of teams are like, if we go out and get Cam Newton, then everyone's going to say, if things don't go well 3 weeks into the season, you should put in Cam Newton. So I do kind of wonder if that is something working against him. I have no idea where Cam's going to end up. It's very bizarre to me. And I think that it would help him if the virus gets under control a little bit. He might just not sign for a couple months because he might say I'm in good health, but a lot of people can't see it because they can't have a physical. So he might just say I'm going to wait until I can get a physical with some of these people and show them that I can be still an effective player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing really distracting about him to me is his texting fonts, but that's besides the point. I still think that, if the shoulder works out, I think he has a lot left in the tank. And, this guy's still, 5 years removed from winning an MVP, from being named the best player in football. It's only been 5 years, and he's almost out of the league. That's just crazy to me. Yeah,
no, I mean, and part of it is to his style. He's not a traditional quarterback, so there is something there too. Yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes down to it's like every team that you think about, though, there's like a reason. Like you could say, yeah, I guess, but there's no team that's like, oh, they should absolutely get him. I think. I mean, honestly, I still feel like the team that would make the most sense would be the Patriots, but they seemingly want to go Stidham, who I do like, but
I don't know if he fits Patriot system. I don't know if he's going to fit that McDaniels offense. Although, I guess I don't necessarily agree with that because the best thing about the Patriot system is that it can change from week to week. They can literally do whatever they want on offense. And that's kind of their thing is that they're versatile. But it's just, I guess they have to fall in love with the guy. So.
Right. And actually, let's stick with the Patriots now. I'll transition to let's go to James Devlin. James Devlin's retired. I'm sure with a heavy heart, you're sitting there, Kyle. Devlin, huge. I believe he won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots, a huge part of them for a very long time. And as much as fullbacks don't get much credit, you definitely saw how it hurt once he went down last season. What was your reaction to Devlin retiring?
Yeah, this one really hurt. Like our running game is pretty. The benefit to Devlin was he was essentially that 6th offensive lineman out there that would just run through the hole and beat people up. And he was such a good fullback in that regard. I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to be devastating because, I mean, I think a fullback's definitely a replaceable position. It's not like, there's only 15 good quarterbacks and there's only 32 spots. There's plenty of fullbacks that'll go out there and do the job. But I think you just saw how bad it was when Devlin is out and how long it took a Landon Roberts to get up to speed on the job before he was actually ready to be impactful at the position. And so I think having a guy in the building that can learn the job and get to that point is going to be the biggest thing. I know they drafted what was the second tight end they got? Dalton Keene, I think, out of Virginia Tech. And he played some fullback and tight end at Virginia Tech. And he actually looks like he's going to be a pretty good blocker. And that's pretty much what he's brought in for. So I could see him slotting in there, plus being a good athlete to go out and catch some balls out of the backfield also, which is another thing that Devlin was actually kind of underrated at during those play action plays, that the safety valve was hitting Devlin over on the flat for a good 3-4 yards. So having a guy like Keene be able to do that, and he's probably more athletic than Devlin, is going to be helpful. It's just the ability to carve out holes in the middle of the defensive line, especially for a guy like Michel, who I don't think is very good and doesn't break a lot of tackles. That's going to suck to lose him in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that not just losing him, but losing Gronkowski, it was almost like they had 7 offensive linemen on every play, but then also, one of them's a back and one of them's a tight end. So it gave them such an advantage. And that's sort of how they power ran their way to a Super Bowl victory. Definitely, I do think should hurt the New England Patriots. Yet another blow to the Patriots, who I still don't think are dead, but definitely they've had hit after hit this offseason. It'll be interesting to see what they do to come back from it.
Yeah, I still feel like this is going to be kind of a rebuilding. This is going to be a weird season to watch for Patriots fans. I just, I don't think they've addressed a lot of needs that are really going to make this team good. They didn't get anybody who's going to change the game on offense, and that's really what they need. They didn't have any playmakers, especially when Edelman was at 60, 70% last season. Nobody could get open. Nobody could make a big play, and they still don't have a guy who can make a big play like that. At this point, I see Edelman playing quarterback more than wide receiver with the roster. So it's going to be a weird season to watch. I don't think this team's going to win a lot of games.
Well, let me. I kind of had this thought though. It's like they do have, they were very banged up in the receiving core last year. If Edelman's 100%, if Sanu is 100%, and if Harry is 100%, those could be 3 solid receiving options. I mean, I do think that N'Keal Harry, it hurts a lot to miss that beginning portion of your time as a wide receiver, and you can't really get into the rhythm of things. And I do think that Sanu, he was good before getting hurt, and I think that maybe if they're healthy, they could be better than people realize in the receiving department.
Yeah, I still like Harry. He had flashes last year. I mean, the biggest thing, I felt like for a rookie wide receiver, missing a lot of preseason and training camp just kills you.
It does,
especially for if there's one offense you don't want to miss training camp for at a receiver position, it's the Patriots offense with Tom Brady, because if your route is off by a yard, he's not throwing you the ball ever again.
Right.
But I thought he had flashes. He had 2 touchdowns last year in a limited role. He was robbed of a 3rd touchdown that should have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs last year.
Still bitter,
still just a little bitter about that one. That was blatantly just awful.
I mean, I think we can all agree. Why can't the Patriots ever get the calls? Why does everything go against them? It's so unfortunate.
Woe is me with this one. I know you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, honestly, I like flashes of him. I thought Sanu was terrible, but we'll see what happens. There's been moments where he was actually good. So if he can get back to that form, it should be fine. I still just overall, this team didn't get open. And I don't know what's going to lead me to believe that an aging Edelman and an aging Sanu is all of a sudden going to get open in the middle of the field when they just couldn't. They couldn't separate. They had the worst separation in football. And I don't think it was particularly close. And for a team that doesn't run a lot of vertical routes, they let Philip Dorsett go, who was probably our only vertical guy, and they didn't really replace him in that regard. So there's no vertical threat to, tell the defense, hey, we shouldn't play up on these guys who can't get open anyways. So I just don't know where there's going to be any openings in the passing game. I feel like it's going to be a rough year. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Their defense is still good though, so we'll see. But we'll move on to Trent Williams, going from the Redskins, finally free of Dan Snyder's grasp. He is now a San Francisco 49er. Really, I think just good situation for him and, good situation for the 49ers. Kind of a lateral move, losing Staley, getting Williams. Maybe, we haven't seen Williams play in a little bit, so it's kind of hard to really see how he will be. But it's always great when you can replace a legend with a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, what was he, a 5-time Pro Bowler, and he's still only 31? For some reason, I thought he'd been in the league like 15 years. It feels like it sometimes at this point. But, it's the perfect replacement for Joe Staley. And, they get him on the cheap based on everything that happened. And, we talked about Mayock, who I think is really good. We talked about Belichick. John Lynch is right out there as one of the best GMs in football. The guy's just done an incredible job since he's walked into San Francisco. He doesn't have to pay Buckner this next season, the expensive amount of money that he was cost, and he gets a Pro Bowl left tackle out of this. This is a big move. I really like what they did here, especially for so cheap.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising. I'm kind of, as a Tampa Bay fan, kind of saying, we wouldn't give him a little bit more than that for him. But yeah, I mean, I think the contract probably factors in. But even so, I mean, they're trying to win a Super Bowl. This is a good move to win a Super Bowl. You need good tackle play, especially at the left tackle position, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, especially with Garoppolo, who isn't the most mobile. So definitely a good move. No real negatives for the Redskins. I mean, it's just them screwing yet another thing up. It's nothing really too surprising there, I feel like, but at least it's over now. Yeah. All right. So let's move on.
Shout out to Dan Snyder on that.
Yes. And speaking of screwing things up, I kind of wanted to almost eulogize Mitchell Trubisky in a sense, where he has not gotten his 5th-year option. I just find this an interesting thing, and I figured with not a 5th-year option, time for us to talk. We could actually talk about it on the podcast. I do kind of feel like for Trubisky, unfortunately for him, he's always going to be remembered as the guy who got selected before Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in. I didn't really understand the Trubisky hype when he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a very old school NFL move to just look at the prototype and be like, okay, that's our guy. Oh, he's 6'3", white, and can throw a ball 20 yards. Okay, he's good. And but the thing is like this guy wasn't far removed from being like a pretty solid quarterback. I do think there's something there, whether it's what he was doing in Chicago or if the guy's just lost all confidence, who knows? But this would be a great opportunity for another team to take a flyer on him and see what's there and see what the asset looks like.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that I think it's interesting. He was never great. He was pretty. He got the job done when they went 12-4. He was sort of that game manager type. So I do think that he had a bit of a. He was able to be at least decent for them there. I think that it might have just killed him having the John Fox his first season, where having those situations kind of gives you more. A little bit more, give Jared Goff a little bit more credit for surviving Jeff Fisher, where Trubisky, it's so hard your rookie season to come in and just have a sort of disaster really happen. It's hard to really bounce back from that.
Yeah, I mean, he had the weird Pro Bowl year where like 18 quarterbacks make the Pro Bowl.
Right.
Now, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
18. He was one of the top 18 to 32.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, so I was actually thinking about this a few months ago because I mean, I've talked about the Patriots like 4 times already on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So what's wrong with the 5th?
Sure.
I was thinking wouldn't this be like the perfect Belichick move? If we could just get this guy for like a 4th rounder and then he actually turns out to be what everyone thought he was or something like that. Like that just seems like the perfect move for what the Patriots to do. And it's kind of low risk because it seems like what the Patriots are trying to do this offseason is not have any future contracts. They're not putting any future money or big future money on the table. Everything's a cheap contract. You get him out for a 1 year, you throw him in there. And if Stidham beats him out, then maybe Stidham's your guy. But at the least you have the benchmark of if Stidham can't beat this guy in the offseason, then clearly he's not your quarterback. And then you can see what happens with Trubisky. I just feel like somebody needs to take a flyer on him.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I wouldn't hate the taking a flyer on him. I do think that he could be someone who I almost wonder if I could see him kind of being like, the Taysom Hill type position. Or not saying he'll be like Taysom Hill, but sort of, be someone who can come in and run some RPOs on 3rd down and 3. Maybe he could find some value that way. He is still an incredible runner and really a good scrambler more than anything. So he does have some positive attributes. It's just such it's so crazy that I think most people at the time felt like that he wasn't the better quarterback than Deshaun Watson. So to trade up one spot to get a quarterback that wasn't going to get selected there and have that quarterback get selected before one really good quarterback and one generational talent. Just a remarkably terrible move.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of offenses want to talk about doing this 2 quarterback system like full time. And I just wish somebody would actually end up having the balls to do it. Just deploy 2 quarterbacks and just create chaos. Put him on Baltimore and just have like him and Lamar run around and just throw 50-yard bombs and see what happens.
Right. Good.
I mean, I just, this has probably turned into, outside of Mahomes, the worst like top 10 class of all time in terms of the NFL draft. Like you just look at all the guys who didn't get 50-year options. I got to think him, John Ross didn't get it either.
I think that's a pretty decent. I'm trying to remember now. Wasn't that the Jamal Adams draft? I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Myles Garrett. Right. So Myles Garrett, then Trubisky, bust. Solomon Thomas. He's been okay, but definitely not worthy of a number 3 overall pick. Fournette, not so great. Corey Davis, not so great. Jamal Adams was good, but then Mike Williams, definitely, I think a disappointment for number 7 overall pick. John Ross was in there, although Christian McCaffrey and Mahomes the last. So it was a
Yeah,
very
that's
hit
the
or
thing.
miss. Very hit or miss.
Yeah, I think counting here. I think it's 7 of the top 15 all had their 5th-year option declined, if I'm looking
Gotcha.
at this right.
Mhm.
But then, of course, the guys who were exercised, Garrett's probably a future Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Jamal
Mhm.
Adams is a future Pro Bowler. Christian McCaffrey is obviously as good as he is. Mahomes, that guy's pretty solid. Lattimore's pretty solid.
Mhm.
Deshaun Watson's really good. So, I mean, it is hit or miss, but there are a lot of misses for a top 15. I feel like that's
Yeah.
more so than usual.
Yeah. Also, you're not technically wrong by calling Jamal Adams a future Pro Bowler because he probably will make one in the future. But
Well,
he
he
has
made the Pro Bowl.
he has
Yeah.
made multiple. He's been a first team All Pro as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. But all right, move. Well, we can move on here. Because interesting stuff with Trubisky. But now let's get over to another player. Jadeveon Clowney still has not signed. Just a weird thing. I mean, I felt like he was somebody who was going to be one of the biggest signings right when everything happened. It seemed like he was arguably the biggest defensive player. And I don't know if he just wants way more money than he can get or what, but it seems crazy that, I mean, he's not going to be with the Seahawks, it seems like. I just wonder where he's going to end up going.
Yeah, so it was really weird. I feel like almost at this point, everyone's kind of just gone right by him and
Mm-hmm.
he's sort of missed his chance. But I feel like at the same time, so there's 3 variables to this that I was looking at. And the first was apparently at the start of free agency, he was asking for $20 million,
Mm-hmm.
which is the money of essentially DeMarcus Lawrence, Frank Clark, Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack. I don't think he's that good. I think
Right.
he's good. I think he's really good. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he's $20 million good. The second one was, I think the Dolphins, offered him $17 million really early in free agency, and he turned that down, which I actually thought would have been a really good fit for him and what he does. But then he turned down that spot, and I don't think anyone's really come close to that $17 million offer again, given who he is and obviously his health issues. And then the last thing I feel like about Clowney is I wonder if he's just kind of viewed as sort of a tweener in a lot of NFL circles. You look at a team, he played the 3-4 outside linebacker with Houston majority of the time. And then a lot of the talk was, well, he'd fit perfectly in Seattle because he's so big that he'd be a perfect 4-3 defensive end. And, he was good, but I don't think he wasn't as good as he was in Houston. So it doesn't really seem like his best position is the 4-3 end. It's going to be the 3-4 outside linebacker. And then you look at the teams at the top of with most cap space, a lot of those teams either don't need pass rushers or don't run that sort of defense. So I don't know what's really left for him to find a space.
Yeah, he's one of the more difficult guys to evaluate because he's clearly very good. You watch his tape and he'll just dominate certain plays, but it's almost like he's never actually getting there for the sack. It's always like he's right close to a sack, creating some pressures, but not actually making the tackle. What I secretly want to have happen is that the Lions decide that they're going to sign him and then only have him play coverage all the time, because that seems like the ultimate Matt Patricia move. But I mean, there's certain teams I think could be interesting. I think the Colts are up there. Philadelphia's up there. Even the Chargers. There's some teams I could not that. I mean, the Chargers don't need them, but there's certain teams that I definitely could see. I find interesting, and again, he is clearly a very talented player. It might just be he has to come down, or he's waiting for someone to come up, and it's just gonna take a minute. But again, it's very bizarre. I do feel like he's again one of those guys who was supposed to be he was supposed to be Khalil Mack, and he turns into this guy that's just very difficult to evaluate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Over the Cap right now, and their most current numbers. The Browns have $38 million in cap space. Don't really need a pass rusher with the guys they have there. The Redskins just drafted Chase Young and have Ryan Kerrigan still. The Lions, it would still be funny if they drafted him or signed him, sorry, but they don't really need another pass rusher. The Dolphins have 27, and they were the team that offered him. And then they signed Shaq Lawson and Kyle Van Noy in his spot, which, he's still better than those guys. But at the same time, they did just sign those guys. The Colts added Justin Houston. The Bengals have a pretty solid defensive, or a very good defensive line, actually, I think. I feel like the two teams I would look at, and the one that I'm actually kind of zeroing in on, is if he did like a 1 year, $15 million prove it deal with the Tennessee Titans. I feel like the Tennessee Titans kind of run the offense or the defense that he would fit in really well. And I don't think Vic Beasley's really that good. And I think he'd be a definite upgrade over Vic Beasley. That's the team I can kind of see him going and just proving himself and maybe getting that money that he feels like he wants at the next level. But we'll see what happens.
That's interesting. Yeah. I could definitely see that. Also worth mentioning, just because you have a couple pass rushers doesn't mean you can't, it's not like a pass rusher is out there for every snap. So I could see him going to Cleveland and have them say, you know what, we're going to have Myles Garrett on one side, Clowney on the other, and good luck. I do think that could be.
Olivier Vernon.
Yeah, exactly. And you can have all three of them. Like again, you rotate these guys out. It's not like they all, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. So again, I think it's interesting.
I'm just looking at that.
What's that?
Go ahead. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I do find it very interesting. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But fun stuff. Wonder where he's going, but we'll move on to our last topic. We also have some questions, though, so a little bit more questions from the listeners. Which quarterback will have a better season with their new team, not counting Tom Brady, because I feel like he was kind of a clear front runner in that. And I'll let you go first. I'll let you have the first pick. Take your pick as to who do you think of the quarterbacks that are moving on to a new team or just going to be the first time starting with their team do you think will have the best season in 2020?
All right, so we have for our options Teddy Bridgewater, Nick Foles, Phillip Rivers, Jarrett Stidham, Tyrod Taylor, and then of course if you believe a rookie's going to start their first season, or Joe Burrow is going to start his first season, and then you could believe Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert are going to start year one. Or if you're getting really bold, you could say Jordan Love's going to start, but I don't think that happened.
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, so looking at this list, we talked a lot about Taylor. He's been on two teams and they both said no. I see him as the very safe pick, but I don't think he's going to be very good. The benefit to Taylor is he's going into an offense with a kind of a bolstered offensive line. And also he has two really good receiving options and a good receiving back. So I feel like he's got the weapons around him to actually be pretty productive. Whether it actually happens with his skill set, who knows? Jarrett Stidham, we really just don't know about a whole lot about, except for throwing a pick six to the Jets last year. Phillip Rivers, I feel like, was washed like 2 years ago, and I'm not really sure.
He was good 2 years ago. He was like a dark horse MVP
last year. Last year, sorry. And then Nick Foles, obviously, in Chicago, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know exactly what he is. It seems like he given multiple chances to start and really hasn't worked out. Teddy Bridgewater is interesting, but at the same time, I think I've said on here multiple times, I think the Panthers are going to be really bad on offense next year and just are trying to lose. This definitely feels like a tanking team for me, even with Teddy. And then obviously we aren't counting Brady, and I'm not going to put my money on Joe Burrow. I guess the question would be what you would view as success. I feel like numbers-wise, I feel like with McCaffrey, Bridgewater could put up a solid season. I feel like with the weapons in Los Angeles, Taylor could put up a solid season in Los Angeles, even if it's a safe season based on what his skill set is. But I feel like winning-wise, even though I feel like he's washed, this is a really good situation for Rivers to be in. I feel like that team's going to win a lot of football games just because they have weapons. They have a really good offensive line. They have a really good defense. I still feel like the Colts are going to be contenders in the AFC South. It's just, he's got to take care of the football, which he didn't last year.
That's a good pick. I do not hate that pick whatsoever. That was going to be my number two pick. And I think, to say how we feel about which one is which, I guess the definitive thing we can say is just who has the better season. If you had to give an MVP award to one of these guys, who would you give it to? And for me, the person I'm going to go with is your new Lord and Savior, Jarrett Stidham. I think will have the best season out of these new. And listen, I've been on the Jarrett Stidham train for quite some time now. I think Stidham is a solid quarterback. I think he should have been selected way before the 4th round. And I think that all he's going to have to do is hand the ball off a bunch of times. I think that he's in a pretty good situation where they're not going to ask him to do much. And when they do ask him to do something, he can deliver. The defense that he has playing with him is way better than, I mean, the only one you could even argue would be the Bears. I think the Patriots defense is better, but I do think the Bears defense is very good as well, obviously. And I do think that all he has to do is just come in, play solid, and the Patriots could win a lot of games next year.
I mean, so I just think that if Sony Michel is going to be our workhorse back, my drinking is probably going to go up by about 70% next season. I don't think Sony Michel's really that good. I think he's okay, and I feel like he's actually more hurt, has an injury or something that's probably holding him back. He's had some hip problems throughout his career. I don't know. Like, I'm not ready to say another quarterback's just going to step into this situation and be pretty good. If we're actually going to believe that Tom Brady is going to be good in Tampa Bay, then wouldn't that mean that New England last year was the problem? Because he wasn't very good in New England. And I think a lot of that had to do with the team. There was obviously injuries that held a lot of the players back, but at the same time, that offense wasn't good. They were probably they were one of the worst red zone offenses that I've ever watched. And they just didn't add any like significant weapons. So if you feel like Tom Brady is going to be good, I feel like then it's New England and their offense that was the problem from last season. And I don't really see Jarrett Stidham going in there and lighting the world on fire with what they have as weapons.
Well, I think that the weapons they've added are the ones that have come back and been healthy with, everyone that they're getting back. Their offensive line is going to be a lot more healthy this season. They had a ton of it. They did have a ton of injuries last year. And I also don't totally discount that Brady was part of the problem last year. I do feel like he had times did not play well. I did not think he played well in the playoff game against Tennessee. I thought that he had his moments to win that football game, and he didn't. They only scored 13 points. Definitely the offense as a whole wasn't as good. Sony Michel, I just looked up his numbers, and then I lost them because I'm an idiot. Okay, here we go. It's he actually. Oh wait, no, here we go. Come on, Jackson, get it together. Okay, got it. 4.5 yards per carry in 2018, went down to 3.7 in 2019. Do wonder if there's some injury there, or just maybe the offensive line injuries hurt, or the lack of weapons deep hurt. But I just think that in terms of, really, I think the main reason why I'm picking Stidham is I feel like Stidham is definitely going to be decent. I think that he's not going to light the world on fire, like you said, but I just think there's so many risks with everybody else here. I think that Teddy Bridgewater, I don't know what the Panthers are trying to win even. Nick Foles, I feel like he's just going from Jacksonville to Jacksonville 2 with Chicago. Phillip Rivers, again, he did not play too well last season. And I like Phillip Rivers. I think he's a great player in terms of his whole career. I'm not sold on it yet. And I'm not sold on their receiving core outside of T.Y. Hilton. And again, Tyrod Taylor, he's kind of what he is. I think Stidham can beat that benchmark. And I think that's going to be the benchmark among the new quarterbacks.
The answer for this is actually going to be Cam Newton on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay.
No, but I mean, is it weird to say that I kind of feel like Burrow might be a top 3 player from this new quarterback crop?
No, not at all. I considered him. I did consider choosing him as well. Because I think
he's got a lot of good weapons on that team. I think Joe Mixon, as far as running backs, is one of the more underappreciated in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I like T. Higgins, the draft pick, a lot. I like, obviously, breaking news, I like AJ Green. I think he's still really good, and I still think he's going to be productive coming off that injury. I think that's actually going to be a pretty solid offense. Zach Taylor, that's the coach's name, right? Zach Taylor.
Yep.
He was pretty innovative. He worked with a really good offense in Los Angeles, and I think that team could be really productive, and I could see Burrow putting up some pretty solid numbers in that offense.
And they're getting Jonah Williams back, the left tackle they selected with the number 10 overall pick last year, missed all of last season, so they're going to be getting him. So it's almost like they got an additional top 10 pick. Yeah, no, I like Cincinnati a lot. And so fun stuff. We have some questions from the viewing audience. Do you have time for some questions, Kyle? Are you there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right, here. Give me 1 second to.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. I was hoping that your answer would have been longer, so I would have had time to pull it up. But I asked a yes or no question, so that one's on me. But all right, here we go. Right off the bat, Ethan, I gotta know how to pronounce his name because he always responds. Alvoff, I think his name is said. Is Alan Lazard a wide receiver 2 or 3? Can you see Alan? Where do you see Alan Lazard?
Well, clearly the Packers view him as wide receiver 2.
Right.
By their evidence of 36 wide receivers were drafted in the NFL draft, a historically deep draft class, and they drafted 0. So that clearly is how they view Alan Lazard as a player. Where I view Alan Lazard, I mean, I don't really think he's a wide receiver 2. I think his best skill set would be at wide receiver 3, just based on who he is and the talent that he has. But the Packers are going to roll this dice, so he's going to be number 2 wide receiver in that offense. We'll see what he does this year and if he can take a leap. But I would have addressed the wide receiving position and brought in another guy. I mean, they brought in Devin Funchess, but
right. Yeah, he's also no, I do think that I think Lazard probably more of a role player as a wide receiver. Maybe he can step into the number 2 role, but I do feel like, and when Rodgers was at his best is when he had a lot of receiving options. So kind of head scratching that they did not go out and get another receiver. We'll go to Seth said, where do the Steelers go after Big Ben? This is interesting. We heard that they apparently offered Jameis Winston more money. He turned it down to go to the Saints. Do you think that the Steelers are preparing a backup plan for when Roethlisberger retires, or are they just going to try to be competitive and worry about that when it happens?
So I guess that means that the guy who was named after the ducks that he killed isn't going to be the starting quarterback in the future.
Probably not.
No, I mean, I think that this is what happens when you lose a long-term franchise quarterback. Then you got to look for a replacement. I think the interesting thing is, I don't think everyone's really caught up to the fold of how to analyze and draft quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. I think Bill Barnwell of ESPN has always pitched that you should draft a quarterback every year until you find the franchise guy. And that's something that I think Pittsburgh's going to have to do. Unless they bring in, we've mentioned him multiple times, and unless they're bringing in someone like Cam Newton to learn the offense and eventually take over, I don't think Cam Newton's really going to be looking for that kind of role. But they're going to have to look elsewhere eventually, and I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. It's going to come through the draft, though. I think everybody should go through the draft when addressing the quarterback. I would never get a quarterback in free agency unless there was just this guy that shouldn't be there. Like if Aaron Rodgers eventually is booted out of Green Bay, given the circumstances of everything, like that's someone you can address. But overall, I would just be addressing it through the draft, and they're going to have to go down the line eventually and pick out a guy they like. Well, I don't think they're going to be good enough to get a guy like Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence next year. But if they're looking at a guy like this Trey Lance out of North Dakota State, who didn't throw a pick last year and has good mobility, or a guy that I think would actually fit their offense very well is Jamie Newman, who's now at Georgia from Wake Forest previously. Big Ben was always been a vertical passing guy. Jamie Newman had the best deep ball percentage in college football last year at Wake Forest. That might be a good fit for them later in the first round as someone they might want to address that quarterback position.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know. I've always been kind of from the school of thought of try to be competitive when you can be competitive. Worry about next year. We have It's Official who asked just mobile QB or pocket passer. I already know your answer. It's mobile QB, and that guy is Cam Newton.
Sorry, what was the question? If
just in a vacuum, mobile quarterback or pocket passer. If you could have an 85 on Madden, if they're a mobile quarterback or a pocket passer, who do you got?
At the end of the day, it's just going to come down to the offense you want to run. If I were to design an offense, I would take a mobile guy. I just think that you've looked at these guys over the past few years and how that position's developed. I feel like it's an advantage. Obviously it's an advantage when a guy, after 5 seconds, if nobody's open, can take off and go, because it becomes really hard to rush the passer if this guy can take off and run at a moment's notice. So I just think that the way the quarterback position has evolved, that's just becoming the way that it should be for everybody.
Yeah, it seems like at this point you almost have to be have some combination of both. Uh, Someone with a Dolphins logo on their YouTube thing. Their name is just gibberish. If you want me to pronounce your name, you're gonna have to have an actual name and not just random letters. But he asked, or she, what is your opinion on the Dolphins after the draft? Although I have a feeling it was a guy who asked it because 96% of my viewers are men, so seems likely. What is your opinion on the Dolphins after the draft, Kyle?
It was a solid offseason. I think we talked about it. I really like Brian Flores. I wouldn't have paid so much in the court at the cornerback position. I think now they're tied up in $110 million at the cornerback positions between Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. I wouldn't have dressed that position and paid that much money, but I understand that, the Brian Flores defense and that style, you need to have top tier corners, and that's what they addressed and that's what they got. So I think it makes sense for that defense. I think overall it was pretty solid. They brought in some adults. They brought in some solid players. I don't think this team's going to make the playoffs next year. I think they're going to be another solid competitive team that improved, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I could see them being maybe similar to the Raiders were last year, where sort of a competitive team can beat anybody on any given week and can lose to anybody on any given week. But I think they should be. They're definitely moving in the right direction. I mean, you think about some of those other teams that were drafting around them, like the Redskins, the Lions, even the Giants. They seem like they're in a lot better position. I also kind of like what the Giants are doing. But okay, we have two more questions. I'll ask all the questions that were asked to me today. And by the way, if you want to know where you can ask questions for the podcast, just do it I have it on my YouTube channel on the discussion post. I do that before I'm going to make a podcast. You can also tweet me if you have a question. Just say, here's a question for the podcast, and I might do it. It's in the link in the description below on all my videos. I believe it's just Kruger Jackson or Jackson Kruger. If you search Jackson Kruger, it should come up. But one more is YNW Zyron. These YouTube names are crazy. Opinion on Drew Lock for fantasy.
Fantasy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It depends on what kind of league you're doing. So my league is actually we're doing it a little different this year because I want a little more of a challenge. I want 2 quarterbacks and 8 flex positions. And that's going to be our.
Let's go with your traditional fantasy 1 quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, so in a traditional fantasy league, my strategy, I never draft a second quarterback. I draft as many skill position players as I can, and then get the 1 quarterback. Quarterback especially in an auction draft. I feel like unless you're getting Mahomes, I'm not spending more than $20 on a quarterback. So I can get a good value quarterback like in that 7 to 8 quarterback range and not have to break the bank for it. I don't think Drew Lock's in that 7 to 8 range. If you're a guy who likes a backup quarterback and likes that insurance, he could be a late round guy for me or a low cost couple dollar guy for me as a guy that could be at the bottom of the draft. But if I were to rank quarterbacks for fantasy potential, I would say, even though I really like Drew Lock, I would probably have him around, without looking at a list in front of me, 16 to 17 maybe, maybe 15, but I wouldn't have him any higher than that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think for fantasy, you're going to get if you're in an 8-team league, you're going to get like at worst case scenario, like the 11th best quarterback. And I don't think he's quite there in terms of fantasy. I think he'll be a better real life quarterback than a fantasy quarterback. So one more question. It's a little bit longer. I'll just ask the first part. Just where do you think the Detroit Lions defense will rank this year? Terrell Carter asked it. Will it be I'll paraphrase. Will it be last or second to last? What do you think? That's my addition with the second part. Yeah.
They're solid players on that team, but at the same time, they've paid a lot of the wrong positions that just don't seem to make a lot of sense to me in terms of who they're paying and where they're paying them to play. Matt Patricia's got to be first coach fired, right? Like if you're just putting together a game pool, like that's who you're just picking, right? I feel like Matt Patricia, that's just what this team is. He's a defensive coach that doesn't coach a very good defense.
Right.
And they never blitz, and I'm not a huge fan of them. So
yeah. Yeah.
I guess last.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm with you. And he actually asked some good stuff about scheme, but podcast is about over, so we're not going to get into that. But Kyle, anything else you wanted to say about this past week and a half of there being no sports on?
Yeah, I'm reading a lot, so
Okay.
make sure to read a book if you're bored. There's some great books out there. I just finished Friday Night Lights and plowing through the book of basketball right now for another side project I'm doing. So make sure to read out there, kids.
Okay, so Kyle's advice to the kids. Well, that'll be our next weekly segment. Is Kyle's advice to the kids at the end of the show?
Excellent.
Yeah. Sorry. Any more closing thoughts, Kyle?
Not much. I'm trying to look through this this schedule real quick that just got released. I'm excited for football. Right. Obviously, each week we're getting something new, and I can't wait for it. Getting closer and closer.
Yeah. Is it out yet? Is the schedule?
Yeah, I got the notification out that it's out now.
Okay.
Las Vegas.
I was gonna say, why don't we do this? You tell. Yeah, let's go through it right now on the podcast. You tell me some of the. Just tell me stuff. I'm not gonna look up anything. Tell me what you find interesting.
All right, let's see if I can pull this up.
Okay.
I just saw an article.
We're an hour and 5 minutes into this We're an hour and 5 minutes into this podcast. Who cares? I'm sure that this will be.
All right, let's see if
only the diehards are listening.
If anyone's made it through an hour and 5 minutes, this is your treat. We're going through everything.
Exactly.
All right, so we got Texans at Chiefs, that incredible playoff game, opening up the season on September 10th.
Okay. I don't hate that at all. It'll be interesting to see how big of a lead the Texans blow this time.
Yeah. Your Tampa Bay Buccaneers opening up week 1 at 4:30 at New Orleans against the New Orleans Saints. So it's the classic Brady versus Jameis matchup week 1.
Yes, exactly. I wonder if Breeze will be back from his cruise yet, and we can see some Jameis.
Yeah, this week 1 slate looks pretty nice. You got obviously that one. You got the new look Cardinals at the 49ers week 1. Dallas Cowboys Sunday night at Los Angeles Rams. Let's see what else we got here.
Why is that one the Sunday night game? Give us
Cowboys at Rams.
Yeah, give us Breeze Brady. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
terrible move. I get it's the Cowboys. We'll watch week 2. Give us Breeze Brady. Terrible decision.
So let's see here. Any other big games that I can pull up really fast? Who are you interested in seeing?
Just what's the Monday night game for week 1?
Monday night they do that weird doubleheader because they need a West Coast game Monday night week 1.
Right.
The first game it looks like is the Steelers at the Giants, and the Titans at the Broncos is the second Monday night game. Not the strongest slate there for me.
Yeah, what are they doing?
They're trying to get Booker.
Terrible.
Listen, but I really think that Sunday night has taken over Monday Night Football as the marquee football game of the week. I just feel like more people view, and I think they're trying to give less big games to Booker McFarland. So that's just pretty much what's happening. Then week 2, we got Bengals at Browns Thursday night, and then Patriots at Seahawks Sunday night. So
okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. All right, so fun stuff. Not too much to talk about other than the schedule makers clearly don't know what they're doing. But other than that, it should be interesting to watch. I think we're just all ready for football to start. So, all right, Kyle, thanks for coming. Thanks for, I don't know, being a co-host of this podcast. I guess I don't have to thank you for that. But it's a good podcast, and I'll see you next Monday.
Yep, sounds good. Have a good one, everyone.